Did Melinda?
Let's do it.
Just remember to change. I see many of you already have. I haven't. I'll have to do mine as well. But just change your titles to spoke or hub. And we're going to get started. We're going to go ahead and do our introductions. And as we've been doing, we are going to start with our spokes first. I'll call you out as I see you on my screen. So the first person I see, so give your name and who you work for. That'll be very helpful to Stephanie. Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Russell, and I work for the UNC School of Medicine, Carolina Institute for Developmental Disabilities, and we support statewide.
You, Amy. I know you just muted
Yeah,
yourself, but
it's
you're
all right.
next on my screen.
Good morning. I'm Amy Woodsong, and I work for Piedmont Health Services. We serve 4 counties, but we serve patients all over the state.
Kevin.
Oh, did you call me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
hi.
okay.
I'm Kevin. I'm a social worker with Atrium Health Levine Children's Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics Clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we serve patients statewide.
Great, thank you. Tiffany?
My name is Tiffany. I'm a supports manager with the ARC of North Carolina, and I serve counties Cabarrus, Rowan, and Davidson.
Great, thank you. Michaela?
Hey, Michaela Robbins. I work with the ARC of North Carolina as an advocate and community liaison across the state.
Great, thank you. Katie?
Hi, my name is Katie Keener. I work for the Carolina Institute for Developmental Disabilities, along with Hannah Russell, and I'm a family navigator. We serve families statewide as well.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm a supports manager with the ARC of North Carolina. We serve Buncombe, Henderson, Alexandria counties.
Wonderful. Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margaret. I'm a care manager with the Autism Society of North Carolina, and I'm in the Triangle region.
Thanks, Margaret. Ruth?
Hi, my name is Ruth Byram. I'm an autism resource specialist with the Autism Society of North Carolina, and I'm down here in Mecklenburg County.
Great, thank you. April?
Hello, I'm April Godfrey. I'm with Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics in the Concord office, but we serve statewide.
You. Ainsley?
Hi, I'm Ainsley Mullen. I'm also with Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics in the Charlotte office, serving statewide families.
Thank you. Mike Coop?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Humo. I'm the social work supervisor here at Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics. We're working along with Ainsley, April, and Kevin. As mentioned, we serve patients statewide and also surrounding states as well.
Thank you. I'm going to move over to our hub team members. And the first person I see is Steve.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steve Strom. I am representing the North Carolina Fragile X Foundation as the volunteer board chair. In my day job, I work for North Carolina Medicaid as the Money Follows the Person project director.
Thank you, Steve. Christy?
Hey everyone, I'm Christy Moore. I'm the Family to Family Health Information Center program lead with the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then Melinda, I'm not sure what that other word, it says read AI meeting.
Somebody must be using AI to take notes. Is that
okay? That's
yeah,
nice. I'll take that.
Fine.
All right. My name is Kim Tizard. I am the Director of Family Support at the Autism Society of North Carolina, and I co-facilitate this amazing echo with my partner in crime, who's right next to me in my squares.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn things over to her. Melinda?
And Morgan Parlier sends her regrets. She is down with the same illness that's taking down lots of people in North Carolina right now. I'm Melinda Plew. I am Director of Advocacy and Chapter Development for the ARC of North Carolina, co-facilitating with my friend Kim. I think this is our 6th cohort. We love some Project Echo in our organization. So happy you guys all joined us again today, that you keep coming back. I am going to go over what we call our Echo shtick. And let me read that for you right now. So just a reminder, our purpose in these sessions is in telementoring those of you who are providing family support in North Carolina for the IDD community. ECHO is an acronym, and it stands for Extension of Community Health Outcomes. And it is a lifelong learning and guided practice model that has the goal of spreading knowledge, expanding capacity, and accelerating our collective wisdom. We are a learning community, and we represent a group that is diverse in our experience and in our knowledge. Everybody has input that's important, and we are all here to learn from one another. We want you to know that each of your contributions is valued in this space. Please put yourself on mute and keep yourself on mute and just unmute yourself if you wish to speak during our session. There's a lot of background noise on some of these calls. Please use that hand raising feature because of the number of us on this call, but we will call on you when we recognize that you wish to speak. Please keep your camera on so that we can see your face. Unless you are an observer, I do not think we have any observers today, but if our observers are here, they will stay off camera. I think everybody has changed their Zoom name, but it just helps us to know what role we are playing in these sessions. We're only using the chat to share a resource with the group. We're collecting all of those comments, and we're sending all of that information out to you, but we want all of your comments in these sessions to be live and in person. We are, of course, recording today's session for anybody who might be absent, or if you want to review it later, or you want to show your supervisor what you've been doing. Please feel free to eat. We know it's lunch hour. We know that you guys are needing to stretch, take breaks, whatever. So this is a casual setting. And with that, I want to introduce our didactic speaker today. She's a friend to a lot of us. Definitely mine. I couldn't do my job half the time without her. And it's Stephanie Antkowiak, and she happens to be not only a person with tremendous lived experience, like a lot of us on this screen, but she also is the executive director of the ARC of High Point, one of our fabulous chapters in the middle of the state. And she has been around a long time, and one of her areas of expertise is in the subject matter that confuses all of us, and that is to talk about Social Security. And I am going to turn it over to you, Stephanie. And I forgot to ask you this stuff. Do you want me to share my screen and you just tell me to advance slides, or do you want to have control over that?
No, would you mind being?
I'll do it. Yep. While you introduce yourself, I will pull it up. Yep.
Okay, that's great. And hi, everyone. I do see several familiar faces. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to go over this. And I beg to differ. I'm probably not an expert on this, but in lived experience, definitely with my own son. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if you have questions, just let us know.
Hold on, let me make this bigger.
Okay. So we're going to dive into Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. My area that I know better is in transition to adulthood, but I can answer some questions about young children as well. So we can go ahead and go forward. Okay, so to get started, we get a ton of phone calls about how do I apply for SSI, and it's pretty simple. You call your local office here in Guilford. It's in Greensboro, and this is just a little bit of information about folks who would qualify. SSI is income dependent for sure. So any family that does not have a lot of assets, so the limit is 2,000 or more, and SSI for a child is going to be based on the family's income, not that child. But these are just some bullet points of what would qualify. I did put a link in for qualifying for SSI, and your payments that you get every month is going to be dependent upon all of those situations. So it's hard to even say, you know, what that payment would be, especially if it's for a child. For an adult 18 or older, this year's new number of 2025 is $967 is the max. And there's another slide down the road where we're going to talk a little bit about that. You do have to send any income updates on a monthly basis once you do get approved. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. I did put a link in to apply for SSI. It changed a little bit during COVID. You used to have to go into the office to apply. And in different areas, it is different. There is a link on SSI website where you can at least start the process. But I still think you have to actually go and make an appointment to finish the application. So you can go forward. So if you're 18 or if you're turning 18, and this is where, you know, our area of expertise, I'm a little bit more familiar with this. You can apply for SSI for any young person turning 18, really on the day you turn 18 or the day after, whatever your birthday falls on. And if this child has a fairly significant disability, then it makes the process a little more clear cut. If your child already receives SSI prior to turning 18, everyone has to go through redetermination at the age of 18. So whether you've received it in the past at any point in time, you still have to go through redetermination at 18. And that process is going to be most of the time online, but then there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out by you, the family member, or by the family member, or including doctors. So a lot of this is going to be dependent upon those psych evaluations or medical evaluations that your patients have. I did put a link in to find your local SSA office by zip code. And you can go on forward. So I've got a list here of everything you would need to apply for SSI. And again, I'm talking a lot about those folks turning 18. I've got highlighted on here, however, the psychological, medical evaluations, any medical records, IEP records, any of that is going to be really important. I cannot stress enough that getting a psychological just prior to turning 18 is really powerful. A lot of families will maybe go off of evaluations they've done in the school system. It's much better, I think, to have a clinical psychological. So if that is something that I hear, there's some pediatricians or pediatric offices on here, getting that psychological is very valuable. If you don't have a psychological within 3 years of turning 18, many times Social Security is going to ask for you to get an update. And many times they'll send you to a place that they approve. I just really recommend getting a one that's independent is very important. So that's the one thing we stress with all of our families is, maybe around 17 and a half, start that process of finding someone to do an evaluation. But here's the other things you'll need: a social security, proof of a birth certificate, names and addresses of every single doctor you've ever visited. And I would make sure, especially if you have like a psychological or a medical issue, you want to make sure you have that evaluation and the doctor's name and address along with it. They will send referrals or back and forth to the doctors to get information. If someone has a work history, you're going to need to have that information. Bank statements, usually proof of any kind of income, or your resource asset limits are important. And then proof of a living arrangement. So that could be anything from a power bill to a mortgage or lease. So all of those are something that you will need for the application. You can go forward.
Stephanie, are all of those things only directed to the 18-year-old and up, right? None of that has to do with the parents.
If
the work stuff and the income and all of that.
Yeah, well, if you're under 18 and applying for a child, they're going to want to see the family's information. So
18, it's only the person that
right.
you're looking for. Okay.
Yes, because at 18 you are your own person. Yeah. If you're as a family member applying for representative payee, I think the one thing that a lot of people are have not heard is that guardianship is really not even counted according to Social Security. Their form of guardianship is representative payee. So they're not even going to ask you if this person is in guardianship or not. Basically, what a representative payee is, they're going to be a joint person on that income coming in, and you're able to set up a bank account that will have both of your names on it. So a rep payee is a person who helps manage those funds. That will come after you're approved. So the first step in the process is to get approved. And then after that, you can apply to be rep payee, or the family member can be rep payee. And when I went, Melinda can attest to this, but I'm all about, self-advocates being able to manage their income. And my entire goal for my son is that I not be a rep payee. I am a rep payee for him, but it's really just teaching him how to manage the money first, So anyway, that's really on an individual basis, but they will question you and ask, is this in the best interest of, the individual? So you can go ahead.
And Steph, I see hands raised. Do you want to hold questions to the end, or do you want people to ask questions as they?
No. Let's go.
Hannah has her hand raised.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, thank you so much. So I'm sorry, I hope this is not a complicated question. On the last slide, I was wondering if the family has 2 children and they're a rep payee for one of them, will that income count for the other child's SSI disability?
Are they both over 18?
No, one's over 18 and one is not. But
So
the family is applying for SSI disability for the younger one, and they wanted to know whether the rep payee account would count towards like the family income for the younger child.
I don't think so. I think that the 18-year-old is officially their own person at that point, and that is their own income. So rep payee, it's not considered, when my son gets income, it's not considered my income. It's considered his income.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I was like, I
and
hope that's
again,
not too complicated.
I will preface this by saying I'm not a licensed financial planner. I'm almost 100% certain that that is the case. And the only reason I know that is because I also do taxes for a VITA program. And, so when a person gets SSI, that is for that person, not for the family.
Ruth, thank you so much.
Hey, so I have a question. A couple slides back, you were mentioning if a child had SSI when they were younger and then they turn 18, they have to be reevaluated. So that's a totally different process than reapplying.
Yes.
So like in my case, my son had it when he was baby, but hasn't had it for a lot of years. He's 15 now. So we will reapply when he's 18 or we.
Yeah, you would reapply at that point.
Okay.
But it probably would help that he did have it in the past because they've got a lot of the information already, probably on the diagnosis and all that information. But everybody at 18 is reevaluated. Yeah, just across the board. Yeah.
But it's a totally separate process. Like there's not specific paperwork for reevaluation versus for applying. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't know that 100%.
Okay.
Because again, I know a lot of the process of turning 18. Really, here's the hard, fast rule. With Social Security, it's really, they're looking at, will this person be able to work and sustain themselves? Okay, so as a child, obviously, they're not going to do that. So at 18, it's going to be more about, will this person be able to work and be able to support themselves like any other typical person? And so they may be looking at different things based on that. Yeah. A lot of folks think it's just, well, I have autism, so of course I'm going to get it. But no, it's, if you have autism, but you can work and hold down a job, then you may not need it. So that's where it gets a little, murky.
Right. I got it. Yeah. He had qualified under a medical condition he has, but I don't know if that applies as an adult necessarily, but now he has autism and intellectual disability. So yeah.
Yes. And that's probably going to be your biggest thing. But if I promise you, if there's any other medical issue that could make it harder for them to work, and I'll just throw out, my son has autism and intellectual disability as well, but he also has flat feet, which makes him really, really hard for him to stand long periods of time. So we obviously documented that. And that will be a factor that would go in. If you have seizures, if you have any other medical issues that could cause you to, a full day to be stressful, that is the kind of thing that you want to include.
Okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
So then we get into fair share. How many of you, and I can't see everybody, but how many of you heard of fair share before? Nope. Okay. So this is something that another mother told me, and you can't find it very many places. Some advocacy websites you can find it. But if you are an 18-year-old and you're applying for SSI, the max amount in 2025 is $967. If you live at home with your family, they're going to automatically cut you by 1/3 because your family's gifting you with a roof and a place to live. So in the world of Social Security, in order to get that max amount, you need to apply for what's called fair share. And that means that that individual would be paying their fair share of the monthly household expenses. And in most of the cases of the families that we're working with, it is very vital that a family, have this extra income coming in, but many of them don't know you have to apply for the fair share. So if you go to the next slide, I think I've got a little, yes. So a parent helped me with this. This is actually one of the spreadsheets that I use with families. what you have to do to apply for fair share is to show what your household expenses are. So I think in spreadsheet, that's just my brain. So what I did was take the mortgage, the electric, the gas, the sewer, and the food, put it out over 12 months, and then get an average, because you know your electric and gas are going to fluctuate by season. So then I got an average, and then you divide that average by 4, or that was the number of people in our household. So at the time that I did this, $517 was our average. That's, the price of things have gone up dramatically since I did this in 2017. So you want to make sure that the average, how can I express this? The average expense is higher than what they're paying him when they cut the third out. So I think right now a third of that is somewhere around $615 would be a third. So your average household expenses should be higher than that. And the weird thing is, if you can take this in, show it to them, they'll automatically pop it up much higher. Not always to the max. It's different by households. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, but they are much more willing to do that. And what you do at that point is every month you would write a check for the household expenses out of that account. And it really helps in a lot of different ways. A lot of families need that money to pay bills, but it keeps your amount of Social Security income lower than the $2,000 level. You can maintain that a little bit better. And I don't forget about ABLE accounts. These are very important to have if you are an SSI recipient, but it does help a family maintain that a little bit easier. Steve?
Yeah, Steve and then Christy.
Okay. Hey, Stephanie, I always enjoy your presentations, and this is a piece that's still confusing to me around the fair share. But are you saying that if you take that total expenses you have here divided by the number of people in the household, and it's greater than that $300 that they're lopping off because the person still lives at home, I always thought that if it was $300 or less, then it'd be like, okay, there's no subsidy from the parents there. Are you saying that if it's higher, then you're more likely to get the money?
Yeah. Okay. So not the 300, but the 600. The remainder of what they're giving you. So say it's 967 divided by 3 in my head, $320. Okay, a little bit more.
Okay.
So you've got a remainder of $640. No.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay, 640. Yes. So your average expenses need to be higher than that 640.
Okay, and so I guess that still is my question then, like if they're higher, then doesn't that signal that parents are kicking in more money?
They are. Well, here's the thing. So if you get approved, they'll still ding you for about 3 months because you have helped them. You're going to, they're going to, I think when we applied like in December, but he didn't get it until March because I had helped him for the few months that he had had SSI. So they're very, very strict about that. And they had a calculation, which I never understood, but it's government math. But they did eventually approve us, and he was able to get the higher amount. And we help families all day, every day with this to make sure that they are getting the amount that they need. Hi, Kevin.
Hi. So I just have a question about kind of all these calculations and everything. Is this why the special needs trust exists? To kind of help circumvent some of this, or at least mitigate the impact of it on?
No, well, this is considered income from the individual.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
like a
Okay.
special needs trust, you can't, there's several different types of special needs trust. There's the trust that a family sets up, you've got a self-settled special needs trust. But really in order, I would recommend an ABLE account over that. And what we do when my son gets close to 2000 is we will roll some into his ABLE account, but we also have a monthly amount going in, just like $50 or something that goes in to help, keep it in balance. Because they will dock you if you go over 2000. I learned this when we were getting ready for him to go to college. We moved some money into his checking account to pay for college on the first day of the month at 12 a.m. on the first day of every month. They will check your bank account. And we had rolled money in for that to pay college. And he owed $2,500. And we had to pay that back. So,
Nope, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I want to be able to make sure that Steph
Yes.
can get through all of her slides. So let's hold questions until the end. They're great questions. And I think, Steph, what might even be great is in a future, like we need to probably wrap our heads around the fair share just by itself.
Oh, yeah.
Working
You
with
could
families.
go. You
Yeah.
could.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you want me to go back a slide or? did
No,
you
we
finish
can
this
keep
one?
going forward. We'll just keep on going. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Okay, so this is just the slide on what is the maximum for 2025. I looked all these numbers up. These are right off of the SSI website. It went up to 967. Just so you know, it was 943. So it goes up maybe $25 a year. But these here are what an average person would get in 2024 versus 2025. It's really not that much of a difference. There is a different amount if you're married. So for a couple, and the essential person is almost irrelevant because you had to be born before 1975. So the majority of the people that we support don't even fall into that guideline, but it's everywhere. You can go forward. So this is the main question is, if I work, how will it affect my benefits? And, there's so many myths out there. I'm sure you guys have heard it, but I can only work 20 hours a week. I'll lose my check. My income will decrease. I'll lose my SSI and then I'll lose my Medicaid. Overpayment is so easy for someone if you're not watching that $2,000 limit. You will have to, it's called going into overpayment where you owe them money back. I can't work because I'm disabled. All these myths just drive me absolutely insane. So I'm going to try and dispel all of them. You can go forward. I think the biggest thing we hear is that no one is really, I should back up. If you are going to work, you do need to know how to manage the benefits. And that's the first thing out of the gate. I'm still learning to manage them, but I'm also trying to teach my son how to manage them as well. And it is important that we teach ourselves and them how to do that so you don't get into trouble. You can go forward. There are all kinds of supports out there. Social Security does have some things set up. It's often hard to find the people who can help you. The state of North Carolina is doing a really cool program right now through NC-APSI, where they're training people in our community how to help families learn how to manage this. Have any of you heard of a WIPA before? That term, WIPA. So it's a work, I can't even remember what it stands for, but there's about 12 across the state that manage. Melinda, your friend in Charlotte.
It's work incentive. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the chat.
So there's like 11 across the state, but obviously it's so much harder to find or time to even get to these folks. So she's finding it. The state of North Carolina is participating in training a lot of folks across the state. We have several in the Triad area that we work with that will help family navigate those benefits. So it is good if you can find someone. And if you go to the NCAPC website, I think they have a list of everyone who's been trained throughout the state. But
and it's, sorry, work incentive planning and assistance.
Thank you. Thank you. So Ticket to Work is a really great program. And that's really to assist anybody who's on SSI to gain work and to understand their benefits and how to manage them. There are also things, impairment related work expenses. So let's just say like my son has flat feet and requires certain types of shoes that Medicaid won't pay for, but we can exclude that from some of his when he works. They do deduct some of your SSI, but we can count that as exclusions. The quarterly pair of shoes we have to purchase for him. There's blind work expenses. There's a phenomenal program called Plan for Achieving Self-Support. If someone wanted to start their own business, but let's just say it's a lawn care business and they needed to buy a lawnmower, you can work with Social Security to keep your the amount of money they would deduct for you working and create a savings account. So there's lots of things that can help a person be employed that unless you go to one of these WIPAs or know how to figure this out, it's just not publicized. So we want to make sure families know about it. And I can give you a lot more information on that. You can go ahead and go forward. So here you go. If you want to meet with a WIPA or someone who understands benefits, the very first thing you need to do is to order from Social Security. Order from Social Security. And this is something you cannot pull off your My SSA account or order online, but you have to make the phone call to your local office. You order a BPQY. And that is basically a query of how many resources you have received through Social Security over your entire lifetime. That is essential if you're going to get a benefits counselor to work with you. Here's a little bit more about age 18 redetermination. Everyone has to go through it. It is a lengthy process. I've heard. I did not go through it because Sam was 18 before we applied. There you go. Okay, so this is just a little bit about if you are working, how Social Security decreases your SSI benefit as you work. So this is where families start going, well, if you know my loved one works, his SSI benefits is going to be decreased. But it is more beneficial to work than for someone to give you a gift. How many of you knew if you gave your loved one $100 that they're going to lose a portion of their SSI benefits if reported? And that's even if it goes into a bank account and they audit it and look. You would lose $80 from your SSI check. If you work, however, and earn $100, there's a second exclusion. And you get a general exclusion of $20, an earned income exclusion of $65. So if you work, 85 is excluded, so they're only going to look at the 15 that's remaining, and then they divide that by half. So if you're given a gift, they're going to take off $80. If you work for it, they only take off $7.50. Now, these exclusions, and this is where a lot of our advocacy could come into play, was really set up like in the 70s. So it really doesn't reflect how people earn today. And that's why, we definitely need to advocate for those to change. But that is basically what happens when you do work. So my son, let's just say he's working 20 hours a week and he's making $500. That math is going to be quite a bit different. They will usually deduct around $250 from his SSI because he's making $500. You will never lose money. You'll always be making more money if you work. Always, always, always. Another trick that we definitely took advantage of when Sam went to UNCG is in the first 2 years he was at college, we took advantage of the student income exclusion. So as long as you're in post-secondary, they will waive any of the work benefits that you make. They did not take any money off of his Social Security during those 2 years. So you just need to know about these tricks. You have to call, you have to apply for it, you have to manage it, but it can make a huge difference. And it really helped, because he was there during COVID. He was working 30 and 40 hours a week at Harris Teeter because, they needed people, and he was making really good money, and they did not take the money out of his Social Security check. So it was great all the way around. You can go for it. So this is the killer that I think the most important slide. You hear all the time, if you have Social Security or SSI, you cannot work. And when I learned about this is when I said, I want Sam to work 40 hours a week. So if you have been approved for Social Security and received one SSI payment in your lifetime, you still meet the disability requirements. So most of the folks we support do. You still meet all the non-disability SSI requirements. And that's, typically your $2,000 limit and everything. And you need Medicaid benefits to continue to work. So my son has innovation waiver, and he needs the job coach to go with him to work every day. Okay. As long as you receive one payment in your lifetime, you can make up to, and this is the little box down below, $43,307 in North Carolina annually and not lose your Medicaid. Let that sink in. And that's something people don't tell you. We really need to encourage, people to work, because the biggest thing is, if he's making even $30,000 a year, he does not need SSI payment. He's making $30,000 a year, but he still keeps his Medicaid and he keeps his innovation waiver. So I think that is the most powerful thing that we need to show to help people know that they're not going to lose their benefits. But again, you have to know that. And there is some management around it if you're making, over that amount. I put a link at the bottom of this. If you click on that blue link at the bottom, it'll show you by state. And every state has a different income level. You can go for it. So here's a little bit about the WIPA. We had it in there. I think if you just Google WIPAs in North Carolina, they'll pull up the list in your area of the actual WIPAs. But then if you go to the NCAPC website, it'll also show you the folks who have been trained across the state. Melinda, what's your friend's name in in your area. I can't.
Lisa Oakley?
Yes, she's amazing. So if you're in the Charlotte Mecklenburg area, you've got a really great asset down there. So you can go ahead and go forward. Anyway, this is just a link to our webpage. If you want any information, we try and put a lot of this on the Arc of High Point website, but thank you very much. And are there any other questions?
Oh, I'm sure there are. All right, so we've got about 10, 12 minutes for questions. You guys, Steve had a question in the chat. I'll hold that one for last, but do you guys want to go ahead and raise your hands and ask Steph your questions while we've got her here? Tiffany, I'll start with you.
Can you ask for a reevaluation of your benefits if the individual's condition has worsened since they first applied?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I highly recommend that. Yeah.
Christy.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I had a question about food being included in the 1/3 reduction rule because I think, or I've heard that it's no longer included.
I've not heard that. So I actually encourage families when they're filling out the fair share to use that as kind of your equalizer. Think about food prices have gone through the roof as of late, and it really what they exclude and what I've heard they exclude is you can't count cable TV and you can't count a cell phone, but you
Right.
can count a mortgage or a rent, and you can include even in a mortgage insurance and taxes. So like the full mortgage payment can be included. You can count gas, electric, and water and sewer. So those are like the essentials of living in a home that you would have to pay. But cell phones are off and cable TV is not one. Now, some folks do or I've seen include clothing, but not in the fair share payment. And Melinda, you're going to share the
I am.
PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and if y'all have any questions, I'm always open for a phone call. Melinda can share my information. So I'm happy to help answer anything. And again, I always preface this, I've got lived experience. So I have figured out who to call. So
You have. Margaret.
Hi, Stephanie. So I know you said that you had most experience with adults, but as far as like children, is there a different eligibility requirements if they're not going to be working age for like 10 or 15 years?
yeah,
Or is
I think primarily childhood Medicaid is if they have a very significant medical issue. I know that my niece had leukemia diagnosis at I think a year and a half, and her family were able to get it. They were a working family, but they were able to get it because of the significant amount of cost of leukemia. So a lot of families will be able to qualify because they have a very significant medical issue. But oftentimes if that medical issue is resolved, then you may fall out. I've got a family had a phone call from this past week, and the child had a medical issue like that, and it's resolved itself, but now has been diagnosed with autism and was looking for ABA services, but they're getting ready to exit her from Medicaid. So anyway, everybody's situation is a little bit different.
Okay. And then I have sorry.
No,
go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say I had like a part 2 question. As far as like you mentioned that if they're in post-secondary school, they might not take any additional money from any income they make. Is that do you know if they need to be like fully enrolled in as a full-time student, or can they just be taking post-secondary classes? And is that the case?
I can't remember. I believe you had to be in full time.
Okay.
If I'm not, I believe you did.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ruth.
I was just going to give my own personal experience to talk about what Margaret had asked. So with my son, he qualified as a baby because he was premature and he weighed a certain amount. So that's something that families can qualify just based on birth weight and prematurity. He also qualified under a genetic condition. So there's a whole list of things that just automatically qualify you. And you can find that on, if you search really hard and do a little Google search with SSA. So just wanted to
Good.
throw that out there.
Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing that. Katie.
When I've tried to call SSI, I feel like I have a really hard time actually talking to a human. Do you have any suggestions on a better way to get in contact with somebody at the office if you have questions?
I found that there is a 1-800 number if you go to their website, and they've got a call center somewhere in the Southwest. And I'm able to get through to that so much quicker, and then they will contact my local office. And that's if you're wanting to set an appointment up. What we found during COVID is that, you could call and maybe get an appointment in a month before COVID, and now it's like 6 months. So, but if you call that 1-800 number and you get that call center, they're able to kind of go through the antiquated local office phone banks. So, and every local office is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually just did that yesterday. I was sitting in here with a self-advocate, and it was 120 minutes when we went through the main number, Katie, and there was no way. He even was looking at me like, I can't sit here for 2 hours. There was an 800 number. The trick is you have to say help desk and don't answer any of the other questions. You just keep saying help desk, and then it'll take you to that. I had 2 things I wanted to point out, and they're both really quick, Melinda. One, when we were talking about, the level of evaluation that you need, many schools have their school psychologist. Some school system have a licensed psychologist. And so encourage your parents to ask that question. That's what I did for my son, and it's still the evaluation that we're using, and we're 7 years later because it was done by a licensed psychologist that we could do through the school system. That's one thing. And Katie also was asking a question, and I didn't know if it was because we had this come up with 2 callers recently as well, and it was about, is it based on just their income when they're 18? We are finding that there's been a lot of turnover in some of these offices, and some of the folks that are processing the paperwork don't realize some of these things themselves. And they were asking for the family's income. It's like, hold on a minute, this isn't based on the family's income. So we need to make sure that we're helping educate families that we're talking to too, that, okay, it's going to be based just on your loved ones.
That actually happened to me as well, and they thought my son was a totally different age.
Yeah, well, we've had just 3 calls here in the last couple weeks that got pushed up to me because we knew something didn't sound right. And that's what the problem was. It's, newbies who just didn't quite understand that piece.
I've had many similar situations. I've gone with families to Social Security. I do recommend, if you can take your loved one with you, letting them lay eyes on the person that's applying is powerful. But the turnover is amazing at all of these local locations, and you will be more of an expert than they are in many situations.
One of the most recent was somebody who's even on the innovations waiver. and was being denied Social Security. I said, did you take them in with you? She said, ugh, I wish I would have. So now they're in that appeal process, which is ridiculous. So we're supporting that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you get both your questions, Kim? Was you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Hannah.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this information. And my question was that if the person is over 18, can they apply for food stamps?
Oh, yeah.
They can. Okay, so like,
Definitely apply for food stamps. The benefits to that are amazing. I didn't say one other thing. This is something we learned in that NC APSI program. The school system, no one is doing a good enough job in encouraging that 18-year-old to work. If you work a total of 8 quarters, which is 2 years, prior to the age of 24, the person will also be able to be determined for SSDI. And being duly enrolled in SSI and SSDI allows you to be Medicaid and Medicare approved. And there's all kinds of benefits of being duly Medicaid, Medicare. On top of SNAP benefits, you also, according to the company or the insurance company you're with, you can get an amazing plethora of benefits, including like up to $250, $300 a month of fresh fruits and vegetables and over-the-counter meds. You get a little card. It's amazing. So I highly recommend, if you're working with the population that's transitioning to adulthood, that encouraging work at that age prior to the age of 24. Once you pass age 24, it's like age 32 before you can be determined for that again. So we need to be encouraging those young folks to work.
Katie, and then I'm going to let Steve ask the last question.
Okay, this might be a question that everybody here knows, and I just don't. SSDI is for people who can work.
Okay, so SSDI is like if let's say you have a car accident and you can't work anymore. You've had a work history in the past. So you're pulling from the pot of money, the SSDI. SSI is for someone who has no work history and may or may not be able to hold down or sustain themselves economically. May not be able to do that. So SSDI is, just like if you have a car accident and you can't work and won't be able to work, then you have had a work history, you put money into Social Security. So that's what that 8 quarters is of work history. Once you hit that 8 quarters or 2 years of work history, you can then qualify.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is that murky?
Does that help, Katie?
Yes, thank you. I always have a hard time finding my auto in the bottom corner. Yes, thank you.
And Steve, I don't put you on the spot, but if you want to ask your question that you put in the chat as the last question, it's totally fine.
Hey, last week, I don't recall who brought this term up, but you mentioned it, so you can define it for us.
Okay.
Self-settled trust. What is that?
So I'm lucky. I've got a attorney on my board, and she's an estate planner. So let's just say you have an innovation waiver and you are involved in a car accident and you receive a settlement from that car accident. In order to protect your $2,000, limit to keep your Medicaid, you can do a self-settled special needs trust, and that would shelter your Medicaid benefits.
there a follow-up to that, Melinda? May I ask at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there, is that self-settled trust then protected, like there's no Medicaid clawback upon the person's death?
According to my attorney, please know I am not a licensed attorney in North Carolina. So,
Okay.
yes, according to Leanne Cassis, who's our one of my board members. Yeah.
Stephanie, we're going to release you just because we could probably ask you questions all day long. And she's right. She is a great resource and she doesn't mind even when she ought to set boundaries with people like us. She always answers our questions, takes our calls, and is so helpful. And so she is a resource for all of you on this call too, because it is murky, it's tricky, and we don't get it, right? A lot of us don't. So thank you so much, Stephanie. And you can stay, you can, as always, you can stay if you want to, or you can peace out and go enjoy the rest
I
of your
may do peace out. I'm doing my United Way allocation. So
good luck, friend.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon.
See you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, guys, let's move into the second part of our session today.
How do you want to do this, Ruth? Do you want to share your screen or would you like me to share?
I'm
Whoops,
muted.
you're on mute.
I'm still muted. I can share, I think.
Oh, good. Okay.
We'll see, right?
Let me make you a co-host so that you can,
Oh, okay.
Let me do that real fast. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Okay, let's see if I can figure it out. Okay, now I'm going to find my thing. Hang on a sec here. I always get messed up with this little screen up here. Okay. Had it pulled up. Oh, there it is. Okay.
There we go.
Alrighty. So starting
Do
with
you want
family
to
background.
make it a little bit bigger?
I can do that. Nope. Is that better?
Yes. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So family background. Family has one son, age 15, with ASD-ID. They also have other children. The son with ASD would like to live on his own after completing high school. He is currently in Extension's classroom. He would like to have a job as a police officer. The family feels that due to his developmental level and behaviors, he will need the supervision of a group home setting to be able to live more independently. County of residence is Mecklenburg. Number of people in the household: 2 parents, 1 son with ASD, 3 siblings, ages 20, 18, and 13. Diagnosis of the individual. So the diagnosis is ASD level 2, ID mild, ADHD, and anxiety. Let's see, we'll go with strengths of the individual family needing assistance. Family understands the waiver and has been on the run since their son was 8. Family has extended family in the area that provide respite when needed. Siblings also provide support when needed. Family's connection to available community resources. Family has extended family who provide support, great team of doctors, ABA therapists that the child loves, good school setting, and teachers that the child does well with. The needs of the family. Family does not qualify for Medicaid and has private insurance. Family needs understanding in how to go about looking into a group home setting and the process. Family needs financial support for son to be able to live independently. He is 15 years old and a male. Questions for the hub team. How does the family access financial support for the son to be able to live independently without yet having the waiver? What is the process for selecting a group home? Is there a wait list? What supports does a family need to put in place for their son when they're no longer able to care for him?
Thank you so much, Ruth. All right. So in our typical fashion, we're going to begin asking our spokes first for clarifying questions only at this time, just the clarifying questions.
And Ruth, if you want to unshare your screen, unshare, it's okay. Yeah.
Sure thing. Okay.
Great. Thank you. I saw Hannah's hand up first.
Yeah, I had a clarifying question. What is extensions in school? I didn't know what that meant in terms of his like placement.
Yes, so he's in a self-contained classroom. So that's a special classroom just for kids with disabilities. Typically, you have to have intellectual disability to be in those types of classrooms as compared to in the mainstream setting.
Thank you
And
so
the
much. That
actual
makes sense.
curriculum is extensions. It's like modified curriculum, but to the point that they aren't working towards a high school diploma.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure on if that meant like the OCS program or different. So, okay, perfect. Thank you
It's
so much.
different. Thank you. Katie?
I also have not heard of extensions, and I'm in Durham County. But, so my question is, has the family applied for CAP C or 1915I yet?
They cannot because they don't have Medicaid.
Okay, so that means, okay.
Ainsley.
Ainsley?
I actually decided maybe I'll come back to that. I have a comment about 1915I, but it's not a question, so I can save it for later.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
I guess my question was when you mentioned that the son wanted to live on his, in quotes, own. Did that mean that he wanted to live all by himself or just no longer in the family's home?
He would like to live by himself if possible. The family doesn't think that's really realistic, but that is his dream.
Good question. Spokes, anybody else have a clarifying question? All right. If you think of one, you can pop your hand back up. How about our hub team? Do you have some clarifying questions for Ruth? Hannah, you want to ask another question?
Yes, unless anyone wants to go first.
No, you're
Or-
fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think I also had a clarifying question, whether he's been connected with vocational rehab services through the school, like whether he has an IEP, like if I would assume that if he's in a self-contained classroom, he has an IEP, but in his IEP, in the transition supports, whether he's been referred to vocational rehab through the school or through the parents, or like whether they're coordinating his transitional goals together.
Not as of yet. He's in 8th grade, so they'll do that meeting pretty soon as he heads into high school.
Good. I had a clarifying question, just that the interest in wanting to be a police officer, has he had opportunities to like talk to maybe somebody who's in law enforcement, or opportunities and really exploring what's needed for that goal?
I think just in a casual way, getting to know some, like the school resource officer actually allows him to kind of shadow him during the day and allows him to use the wand to help with checking kids in and things like that. So that's really cool. But no, not like in a formal type of way.
But that's an amazing experience right there. That's good.
It is, yeah.
Any other clarifying questions? Good. Ainsley.
Yeah, I think kind of along those lines, I would want to know, what is it about the police officer idea that is interesting to him, to possibly explore ways that he can engage in that, even if becoming a true officer is maybe not in the cards.
Yeah, definitely the family is thinking that direction. They've allowed, it's one of his fixations, just all public service. So that's kind of where the interest came from. And so it edges on the edge of inappropriate at times because he can get really bossy and has arrested some of his classmates on occasion. So they've had to figure out ways to spin that positively. We're like, you're a safety patrol officer and not, you know, maybe a police officer per se.
All right. We're going to move over to recommendations, but of course, if you've got additional questions that come up as we do that, you know, please feel free to pop your hand up. We're going to start with our spokes and would love to hear what recommendations you all have. Ainsley?
Yeah, I will just circle back. So, yes, 1915I, you have to qualify for Medicaid generally. But in our practice, we've been told by different Medicaid providers that occasionally there is state funding available left over for families that don't otherwise qualify for Medicaid. It's not a guarantee, as then there's likely a wait list, but I would still encourage them to possibly look into that and apply if they can, in the event that that proves like fruitful for them.
Thank you, Ainsley. Hannah?
Yeah, actually, my comment was very much related, is that there are state-funded services that you don't have to qualify for Medicaid. So like if you Google state-funded services again, yeah, like I don't know how well funded it is. But there are some kinds of programs that are state-funded versus Medicaid. And then the other thing that I did want to mention is that for the VR referral for IEP transition goals, they have to do it at 16, but they can start at 14. So they could start kind of, you know, doing the VR referral or supporting him with the like sort of pre-employment soft skills before 16. At 16, they have to, but on most forms for the IEP, it says they could do it at 14. So like this is a referral that could be in place now.
Great. Michaela?
I have a couple of things, and I don't know if my second one is appropriate to ask at this time, but along the lines of like an IEP, making sure that he's involved with those meetings. He can be involved in those meetings and voice his wants and what his goals that he has for himself. But as far as the state funded, and if y'all, you know, you shut me down if I don't need to ask this question at this time. I have found that when families have contacted like the MCOs to ask for state funded resources, and those families have called those entities, that they say, no, yeah, it's just Medicaid. So if anybody has some information, I know we're kind of all across the state, could that kind of be included, like shared of like actual state funded? Because anytime that anybody has reached out to these state funded or agencies that have state funds, they say, no, we only take Medicaid. So it's been a very hard thing to come across, at least in my experience as well. So if, you know, we have any recommendations or, you know, answers for that we can share, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Christy, does your hand relate to Michaela's question?
Well, she's probably waiting for the hub.
Okay,
Is that what
all
you're
right, just want to
thinking?
make sure.
But we can go ahead. Let's just go ahead and open to hub and anybody else that may have some recommendations. Christy?
Yeah, so it does kind of relate. So state funds, that's why I grimaced, because, you know, I've been looking into those a lot. And just like with, like you said, the issue with the Social Security administrations, like staff that answers the phone doesn't always know what the organization or agency does. Same with MCOs, I have found. I'm working with a mom whose person at their MCO answered the phone and didn't know what the innovations waiver was. And they're like, sorry, we don't do that. So you may run into folks who don't know what that is, but state funded services, yes, they do have some money left over, but once that funding is gone, it's gone. It's very fluid and it's limited and it's not consistent. So if you're going to rely on it for something that you need to sustain, it's not the best. It could be something, but just know it could last a couple weeks, it could last a couple days, it could last a couple months. It's not a consistent funding source. So it's just something to keep in mind. And if the person you're talking to on the phone doesn't know what you're talking about, you can try to call back and get a different person or ask to speak to their supervisor. Don't be afraid to do that. And are we making recommendations? Sorry, I was
Yes.
writing.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
As far as funding, like he's been on the innovations waiver waiting list for about 7 years. He'll probably be on another 7 more. But in that meantime, he could potentially be eligible for SSI. And that money can be used to help pay for living expenses. I know he says he wants to live by himself, but maybe he could live with a roommate. You know, there are some, so it just depends on what's a bit. He's in Mecklenburg. I'm not super familiar with what housing communities are over that way, but Work Together NC has a lot of that stuff on their website. So that would probably be a good place to check out. And then also, you know, ECAC has the Achieve program, which is a virtual pre-employment transition services program for kids who don't have access to that currently. And it's for high school students, but you know, he's 15, they may consider taking him. So it's something, you know, to look into. And it just depends on availability and things like that. And I think that's it. Vocational rehab was now called the Division for Employment and Independence for People with Disabilities or something like that. New name. Yeah.
Yeah, it's long. Great. Thank you, Christy. Melinda?
That's a little bit of a piggyback. I was just going to say, you know, by the time this young person reaches the age of 18, they likely will be eligible for Medicaid. And you know, the harsh reality is that to get into a group home in this state, you're really going to need a funding source, right? There's just very little. There's very little out there without some kind of funding or service component to go with it. Yes, there are private, but you know, those may or may not be, you know, what the family wants. So I would also say when it comes to the next round of IEP meetings, entering into high school, talking about transition, make sure on the family side that mom and dad are stating in every IEP meeting what their goals for their child are and what the child's goals are. There's a spot in every IEP meeting to say parent concerns, parent goals, dreams, all that, just to consistently get those things in the IEP with the hope that there would be some goals attached to that with some real deliverables so that the school would really work hard on that because you know, it still is true that students in classrooms that are considered self-contained or extension classrooms, the level of expectation may not always match what the family's level is or what the self-advocates is. So we got to really build that from the beginning and set the standard. And the last thing that I would say is that there are self-advocacy groups around, and they do have some around Mecklenburg. They primarily start at age 18, but it's not a hard and fast rule. So just like the other, after the age of 15, I would start to share with a family to look around for self-advocacy groups.
Thank you. Steve?
There. One of the things that, again, is systems are never easy to access, but if I'm preaching to the choir, Ruth, my apologies with this, but you know, the MCOs are the ones that hold the money and hold the networks of service delivery agencies like the ARC, Easter Seals, and so on. So, you know, starting out with an agency, they may be relatively small and not know the bigger picture there. So even if you, that's where I would really recommend that the folks start at. And if you do have an uninformed person answering that 800 number, pick up, call again. There is a Medicaid ombudsman that is supposed to be there. So call them. Like I call and you have an uninformed person answering the phone at Alliance. That's where this was at in Mecklenburg County. I'm needing some answers around this. And you're right. All of those services, like if they're the state funded services, there's some county money that's kicked in. There's the Medicaid money, there's state money. The MCO holds all of that and delivers all the services there. So if they don't qualify right now because they don't qualify for Medicaid, there may be mental health services this child can get, something that gets them connected to the services. And network, just like Melinda said, anytime that you can find some opportunities to find online Facebook groups. There are parents who will help you with all of this. The ARC is wonderfully powerful around that. Centers for Independent Living, there's one in Mecklenburg County. They do start out relatively adult, but there may be some developing leader kinds of programs there for that. If you're not making any headway in any of that, again, disability rights as the protection and advocacy agency for the state of North Carolina is always good to have as an ally. They get tons of these calls, so sometimes that's a hit or miss. In Mecklenburg County, those PREA services that have been mentioned, Voices Together is in many middle school and high school classrooms, and certainly would recommend if they don't have this in that child's class for them to ask. But they're getting money. Voices Together is getting money from EIPD, Employment Independence for People with Disability. You got it right, Christy. To do those classes to build pre-employment skills and advocacy skills for folks. And so some of those kind of behaviors of arresting folks, they can work on more friendly social skills for the child.
Wow, Steve, I think you're gonna have to send me an email with all the resources you mentioned. To make it easier on the recap. Margaret.
Hi, I just wanted to mention one other thing about the state funded services, just with my experience as a QP that worked a lot with state funded services in the past. I know Medicaid wasn't really involved in it a lot. Like we didn't have a care manager for any of those clients that got state funded services. So it was mainly the QP at the agency that was doing all the like requesting the authorization and, you know, doing all the writing the plan that kind of resembled an ISP. So maybe start with like, and I know we also had each provider might have contracts. So like in the Triangle, we had contracts for state funded services, but in the South region, we didn't. So it might just vary based on the provider and the location. So maybe like calling specific provider agencies and seeing if they have contracts for state funded services. And then I'd also recommend asking to speak specifically maybe to the regional director or just somebody that maybe knows more details about like what services they have available, because any old QP or just random person that answers the phone might not know specifically what you can ask for. But that was what helped with us was just knowing like what places had contracts for state funded services and who didn't.
Great point, Margaret. Steve, and then Amy.
One thing I forgot to mention is that every year, beginning July 1 at the beginning of the state fiscal year, the Medicaid waiver restarts. So this is again when all of the MCOs get their emergency slots. So while there is the run registry of unmet need and that child's on that one there, if there's anything that changes, some illness of the parent, some behavior change, it never hurts to call and keep them updated, especially around April as they're taking a look at who has the most critical needs and continuing to inform whoever is assigned to that person's case. It may be a lucky opportunity that they may be assigned an emergency slot if there's a true need that the folks can do. And that's again where many of the parent groups are helpful in helping you tell your story in a way that's compelling.
Great, thank you, Steve. Amy, and then Katie.
I was just thinking back on the child and their want for independent living. And one of the things that might be helpful is just, I mean, he's 15, is explaining or sort of almost like a compromising, like let's start with the group home and then see how things go, because rather than just shut him down completely, being able to say, let's start with living outside of the home in a group home setting or with a roommate or whatever, and then see how you do, and then we can talk about living independently. So not just totally saying absolutely not, because then you're going to have problems with him refusing to go to the group home and things like that.
And to piggyback on that, that was one of the things I was thinking about is the Michelle Garcia Winners kind of mapping, and it's putting the ultimate goal on there, but what is needed to reach that goal and helping the child do that. And I'll make sure that I send that out with the recommendations so you all can do some more research on that. It's really good stuff. Katie?
I just wanted to ask Steve again, if he could just repeat the Medicaid waiver start date every year. What was it?
Yes. So it begins July 1 through June 30th. So like if there are slots that are given up through the year, Katie, that someone passes away or moves out of state or no longer needs those all go back to the state, and then they're reallocated at the beginning of the new waiver year. So if there's 100 given up, those are divided up among the 4 MCOs to be used for emergency slots, military, and so on.
So those slots do not go towards people who are on the run. They are pretty much for emergency slots.
No, they could also be used for that as well. So it depends again, how many are turned over in a given year, how those are allocated back to the state. But again, the General Assembly says you can have no more than X number of slots, and the MCOs manage those, and then they're given up as folks no longer need them for what the reasons I just mentioned, and then reallocated at the beginning of the new waiver year.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Steve. We're going to take one last recommendation from Hannah, but I want to encourage you all, when you get my recap, if you all have something else, you can just reply all and add another link for something else. I mean, this is a learning community, so we're here to support each other. So, you can do that as well. Hannah, we'll have you give our last recommendation.
I was kind of thinking that, especially with his goal for living independently, and not that he's at guardianship age yet, but like working towards that, whether they could maybe start researching some of the least restrictive alternatives to guardianship, like, maybe a power of attorney for education, or a power of attorney for medical, or a power of attorney for financial, or like kind of figuring out, does he need any of those? Or like, just some of the more sort of least restrictive alternatives, so that like when he does become 18, the family and the school and the medical doctors can kind of figure out, what level of support he needs that may or may not include full guardianship, so that he can live more independently if possible.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Katie, I didn't know if you meant to leave your hand up or not. Oh, no, you're fine. Okay. Melinda, I know she had a hop to get to an appointment, so she's in her car.
I'm here.
Okay, you want to go ahead and...
I was putting people's hands down. Forgot you, Katie. That was that last recommendation. I think that was Hannah. That's great, because next week our session is talking about guardianship and alternatives to guardianship and restoration. And so some of your questions or recommendations will tie into that. But in our last minute, we need to figure out who's going to present next week. And I can't see any of you. So Kim, do we have any volunteers?
Come on, somebody. Because if I have to ask. Oh, Michaela, thank you. You meant to do that, right? Okay, good. Thank you. Michaela has agreed to do our next
Awesome.
FPR. So we'll make sure you get that form and you have everything you need, Michaela. Well, wonderful.
Awesome.
Here we are, right at 1:15.
1:15. We will see you guys next week. Just know that we start right at 11:45 because the sessions are so rich. So if you need to get yourself set up ahead of time. We try to open up a little bit early, but we look forward to seeing all of you guys next Wednesday at 11:45, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.